Hi, I'm Gourav.
And I'm Rohan.
Welcome to the Long Take. This week we're discussing the new Indian Netflix movie, Kho Gaye Hum Kahan, which comes from a feature debut director. And it's co-written by a couple of people we actually spoke about a couple of weeks back. The Archies writer Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kakti. And it stars Siddhant Chaturvedi, Ananya Panday, and Adarsh Gourav. This is announced like a couple of years ago, right? With Zoya Akhtar as director, if I'm not wrong. And then she said aside.
No. I remember there was an announcement kind of teaser video and they announced the director's name. It wasn't Zoya.
Oh, I felt like I read that somewhere. Maybe I read it wrong then. Okay. Anyway, so what do you feel about this, I don't know, new age Zindagi Na Meri Dobara Bhi?
I think this movie is kind of unironically, and like the characters are supposed to be confused and trying to figure out their identity or whatever. The movie is like, without realizing it, also stuck. Like it doesn't know what it wants to be.
That was literally like my headline for the review as well.
True.
Which like I wrote is literally like the film is as like sometimes listless and like, you know, just like the characters are listless. They're like, you know, they don't know what to like really do in their life. And the film like has like an idea of like what it wants to be about and what it wants to tackle. But beyond that, the film is like, wait, now we don't know where to go anymore.
Yeah. I mean, but at least the characters have the self-awareness to go to therapy. Like, movie क्या करेगी? Movie को पता ही नहीं है कि problem क्या. Movie is like,
movie needed more drafts, or like they needed the delete button and we just accept that they couldn't do
I
it.
mean, there is no. I wouldn't be that harsh. I understand there is a movie in there somewhere. You know, it's not entirely worthless. There is something to be mined out of these characters, their dynamics, and what they're going through in their lives, right? But the movie is so like dedicated to this social media commentary where I'm like, you don't need it. Are you like a morality tale about the ill effects of social media, or are you a drama about friendship and coming of age? Please figure that out.
No, but I think that's in that sense I'm split. Like I think you're right that it probably pushes into like its sort of fingers into that social media by too much. But I think on one level, like so it doesn't really work at all, I would say, with the Neil angle, which is the other god of character. Like that whole influencer
because
angle, like
the social media stuff, it feels like tacked on, right? Because it's not developed fully and it just comes and goes when the plot requires.
yeah, but
So
with
things will,
like Ahana, I felt it was like actually like crucial to her, like
slightly
her
more
backstory.
believable, yeah.
Because in that sense, I can almost like I didn't know who had written the movie before I watched it, and so I learned it later. And then the thing that went off in my head was like, oh yeah, no wonder the Ahana stuff was better than the guy stuff, because clearly this feels like, you know, like written by a more mature writer like Zoe and Reema, while like the male stuff feels like it probably came more from the director.
Possibly. I mean, the Ahana character, I agree, is the most, it feels more real because
it's just better fleshed out, right? And in terms of the observations they make about her, how her online life or like her lack of an online life affects her offline life, the observations are more acute. You know, they capture the minutiae. Like, I mean, I've known friends who've gone through these sort of like phases, right? And I can feel like proper like real life facets of that. Versus with, as you said, with Neil, it's easily like tapped on and it's external. It's not even happening to him. And with Imad, like, I'm not even sure. Like, I feel like they had an idea of like they want to explore this, you know, like guy with a painful backstory, but then they leave it so late, right? They leave it for the very end, like a Nanette like style, like sort of Hannah Gatsby like moment at the end. But what happens is by doing that, the entire movie, he feels like just like a rom-com dude who doesn't want commitment.
Maybe. Because they kind of lay the breadcrumbs for the reveal also a few times.
I mean, they try, but like it's given. I feel like I'm getting so little through those therapy sessions that I could easily believe it to be something else than be it that dark.
I mean, exactly. It could have been any number of things. You know, he lost his mother. We know that, so it could be something.
Yeah. For the longest time, I just thought like he was in therapy because of his like the mother death. Right. I never thought it would be like that.
For some reason, when he mentioned like age 9 or something, I knew where it was going. And
oh no, I usually thought like maybe I read it wrong. I thought that's when he lost his mother.
Yeah. No, the movie wants you to think that, but then for some reason, I don't know, I just went in the other direction. But then I also the moment where Adarsh Gaurav is like, bhai tu dusron, instead of talking about others, you please introspect. Then I was like, oh, of course, now that's what's going to happen in the final. That's going to be his major like evolution in the movie. So I mean, on paper I don't. That's the thing with this movie, right? On paper I'm like, oh yeah, all this sounds interesting. Like I could
except the Neil stuff. On paper, even the Neil stuff would not sound interesting.
No, but Neil is interesting, not in terms of usko business chalu karna hai, that I don't care about. But just the fact that he is very clearly from a different socioeconomic background as compared to the others, right? And that is a chip on his shoulder. And probably
like he feels like an outsider.
Correct. And the casting of Adarsh Gaurav is also telling, right? Because he's very, he comes close to White Tiger territory multiple times. And just his interactions at home and the generational divide, again, on paper, it makes sense. It could be nice. But the
film does come close to like pushing him like full unhinged White Tiger territory.
Which feels very unearned, honestly. Like I would believe it more.
I feel like the what feels more unearned to me is the fact that the turn back, not the push towards it.
Turn back तो off screen होता है. वो तो समझ ही नहीं आया मुझे कहाँ हूँ. The in one
moment, like Ahana and Iwad shouting at him in one scene, the next scene is like, oh yeah, I need to like, and that was full like, you know, Kabir vibes from Made in Heaven. What happened after that?
yeah.
Full Kabir vibes. I'm like, oh, now after that, I discovered, I was telling you, that who the writers were after the movie. I was like, oh, no wonder. These are the same people who gave us those things at the end of every episode.
Yeah. And Zoya Akhtar loves a good long.
Oh my God, that's summarizing. I cannot stand it. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need like, I mean, it can just be a show thing, you know, like, okay, he did something, he wrote something. Pura dialogue mein, pura narration mein, just like, get out of here.
No, which is why I found it very easy to forgive in a movie like The Archies, right? Because that's very clearly a children's fable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I wouldn't complain about this in Barbie, but if this happened in Oppenheimer, I would complain.
Exactly. But we complained in Made in Heaven because it feels like why it doesn't belong there, right?
And it's tagged on. It's never woven in at all. It's always tagged on in the end.
And this one, my biggest kind of grouse with it was that the observations that the movie is making, chalo theek hai, you want to talk about social media addiction, this, that, now that's kind of isolating human beings, whatever. But the observation that the movie is making about all these things feel very like teenage, like all these things that these characters are going through are decidedly adult, you know. Obviously, she's concerned about employment, business, work, balancing personal, professional. It's not something we see in Indian cinema, which is very strange, right? Because there's this huge gap in the kind of movies
that like what people are living and like, what are the people I see under 35 are living and no one's really like talking.
Yeah, those stories don't exist in our cinema.
Yeah.
For a very strange reason, right? Because for people complain that Hindi movies are being made by the elite who come from like one neighborhood in Bombay. But then those people aren't really making movies about themselves, right? They're not telling their own stories. They're telling stories about...
They're making movies for the rest of the India because they want to like sell tickets.
So on that level, I appreciate at least Tiger Baby or whatever in telling stories about people that I kind of recognize. It's not that I recognize myself in them, but I recognize these people, you know, because these are the people that I'm more likely to come across in my day-to-day life. And we know people like Ahana and Neil and whatever, right, Imad.
Yeah.
On that level, I think it's fine. But then the kind of interactions that they have, the resolutions, all those things feel very like this is high school comedy material. But it just...
it's drifting like between the two. Like it wants to like tackle like early 20s or whatever, mid 20s I think they are. But it never really like, it's not mature enough. Yeah.
It's very immature. Like these characters could very easily be, if you remove certain aspects about their whatever external plots, they could very easily be like school kids, and you'd be like, fine.
I think the reason I was able to mostly like look over that, and I didn't really think about this too much, was that I can accept that these things get carried, like, you know, like it's fine, like it's like Arrested Development, right? Some people, it takes longer for some to go through certain things than it takes for other people.
That's possible. It is possible.
But obviously, your mind starts drifting in these directions because the movie is not engaging enough on like a scene-by-scene level.
Yeah, it's very like hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like some moments I was invested in it. And and a lot of it also because of like the actors are good, you know. Like the stand-up didn't work for me because he's very uncomfortable on stage and he's trying to do a performance within a performance, and that's always very difficult. Like nobody's Benedict Cumberbatch. But here though, it takes you out of it, right? And because the stand-up is so crucial towards the end, where he turns into, like you said, he turns into like a Hannah Gadsby Rothaniel combo. And that requires a lot of skill. So one false step and you ruin it and you ruin your movie. And that kind of didn't work for me, that whole stretch.
Yeah, it's very, so two different things, right? It's one thing to be an actor and play a character, and it's a very different thing to like play a stand-up comic who needs like cadence, right? It's like, there's a reason like Seinfeld did it, because like Seinfeld was that in real life when he was making his own show. And then when someone does it who's not a comic, like if someone was doing it, who just like shows cameos, like maybe he can pull that off better, but then maybe he can't pull off the dramatic scenes as well as Siddhant Chaturvedi.
Yeah, it's like you can't have a stuntman for the stand-up comedy.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean that stuff didn't work. But then I liked when the camera was on Siddhant Chaturvedi's face and he's in that, you know, he's doing therapy and stuff. That was good. He's good in those scenes. You know, he's good in those scenes where he's interacting with, say, Kalki. Even though I didn't care for that relationship much, it felt too rushed.
Yeah, but I think that's like the problem with the movie itself, right? It's weird. Like it's not like a very tiny movie. I think it's over like 120 minutes. But like it's somehow not able to have enough room to explore even 3 characters. Like it feels like that should be possible, but it's just like on a scene by scene level, it's not really, things don't really move at the pace that they probably should be. Like I couldn't even figure out how long the movie was on a timeline level. Like it's probably like between 2 and 4 months, but it could even be a year given the some things we are shown. And I was like, there's not really enough happening in these characters' lives for me to like feel like they've gone through, like there needs to be growth, right? That's what you want from storytelling. The character starts something, they're given a challenge, they sink to their lowest, and then they emerge from that challenge out and they become like a renewed person. And those like milestones we don't really hit with enough like force.
I mean, see, I don't know if I agree, because I can see like the writing discipline coming in. Like this screenplay feels very like precise in terms of the beats it wants to hit. You know, it introduces these characters at a certain point in their lives and then puts them through whatever series of challenges, and then those conflicts kind of become bigger and bigger, and then they kind of resolve and all that. Those beats are being hit. But what I kept getting really frustrated by is that the movie is more interested in reaching those moral kind of conclusions than character-centric conclusions to those conflicts. So it would rather...
When you say that, like I can literally I can transport this conversation to like a Made in Heaven episode and nothing would change about your sentence.
No, because because that's how they write. They want to arrive at that moment where Ahana tells Neil that bhai tune galat kiya hai, instead of, and there you don't need that Instagram angle in that conversation at all, right? The conversation...
I don't need the scene before that. Like I don't need to see what Neil is doing on like Lala's Instagram. You can directly cut between him being annoyed and pissed off to like Ahana shouting at him, and that would actually be a more revelation, because we're like, oh, this is what he did. Like we learn through the friends.
I don't know, man. See, the placing that scene in that moment is also weird, because you have, firstly, they've just resolved their own differences, right? The Neil and Ibad. So that conversation doesn't happen. That's left like on the side, and instead the scene becomes about tune Lala ke saath kya kiya tha on social media. And the flip aside, which is itself ridiculous, they don't really get into the core of what makes people do things like this. You know, the social media revenge is a reaction to a deeper problem, which the movie isn't really interested in even acknowledging or talking about.
And even like repairing the friendship from there, like there's never a conversation between the 3 of them, right? A genuine conversation about like what Neil did. It's almost like they gloss over that and then they bond over like punching Rohan.
No, Ari, the funniest thing in this movie is where I'm watching and I'm like, acha theek hai, to iska to resolve ho gaya, But what about like Imad ka to resolve ho gaya, but what about Neil and Ahana? And it's almost like Netflix was like, chalo, 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 ho gaya, khatam ho gaya, you run out of time, as if it's like a live television broadcast. And there is the movie then enters into this montage.
Yeah.
End credits में where they're like, अच्छा ठीक है, business का ये हुआ, parents के साथ वो हुआ,
Yeah.
उनके साथ वो हुआ.
She's making a full like Instagram videos में Ara basically.
Yeah.
She's listing like 5 resolutions. You know, this is the I was imagining like this as a reel on Instagram. Like, yeah, this is how a woman in her 20s who now hasn't actually grown through her will sum up her challenges. Like, we took resolutions. Like, bro, what was the actual growth? What was the struggle you actually experienced? What have you learned from it? Not like he's like, you know, like wistful, we went on a Spain vacation like level, like morals.
Yeah. It's very strange. The movie just kind of rushes through those 5 like loose ends in its like end credits sequence, which...
And in a very like optimistic cheery way, which was like weird because like the entire movie had like in a way like been very like sort of like mildly depressive. Like they were willing to like sit in it.
Yeah.
Of like how like these characters sometimes like they're not really doing okay. And like she's pretending to be okay, but she's actually not actually okay. Like on that one other thing that hit me well was like that, you know, she in that like, you know, for a big chunk, like Ahana is just like maniacally like depressive, right? She's just like she's pushing herself to be very like cheery and happy and on Instagram, but like she's not anywhere close to that. And then she gets that present on her birthday from Rohan, and the way like her face changes, right? Like, and you're like, bro, like this is not your reality. And she's forcing herself to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And the whole like, you know, when she dresses up fake for her birthday to put like a post and then immediately after takes off the clothes and take off the makeup, like those things are actually done well. But then to like rush through the other stuff and suddenly like have this like Bollywoodized ending where you're like, oh, I learned this. Resolution 1. I'm like, what just happened? This was not we just had a Nenette style ending where the character talked about his childhood trauma.
It is strange because the movie is on the one hand saying that she is so desperate for like validation, like her happiness depends on it. She has low self-worth, etc., etc. Right? But her happiness at the end comes because of whatever personal project that they started coming to fruition, right? Which is the business.
No, I mean, on some level, fine, I guess she's finally gotten closure and like realization on Rohan, right? She's like realized that she was being dumb.
No, but that's like one aspect of her.
Yeah.
No, but she's generally searching for that kind of
they never really solve her like online space, like need for like validation.
Unless they're trying to say that because of that relationship, she became this way, and when that kind of resolved itself,
I don't buy that. This person has been this way before Rohan was in her life and after Rohan. Like it did not start because of Rohan.
Otherwise, she's not getting with that guy.
Which is why it's the one logical flaw in why, which I didn't think about until I started like thinking about the movie, like for our podcast later, was that if this movie is really this online, right? How did she miss a parallel relationship her boyfriend had?
Oh, I can see. That's true.
Because it's not like the person has like a private account, because the first thing she does is she's like, oh, I don't want her to see that I saw her story, so I'll create a fake account, which means the whatever the Tanya woman's account is public, and they were tagging each other at the same time, and she
even the Tanya woman doesn't know, na?
Yeah, and these guys are tagging. Like he has a post on her profile, he has a post on his profile, and she has a post on her profile, and no one really knows somehow except obviously Neil, except Rohan, that they've been tagging each other. How does she not see that? If she's so online, she would have known this ages ago.
And it's weirder because neither of her friends is also like, listen, that guy is bad news. Please be careful. Like, it just...
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Go to that Sangeet of those like mutual friends. Like those friends have never warned either of them. They don't care. They're just like, yeah, live your shit.
Yeah, it comes as almost like a surprise for everybody. Like, ye, aisa kharab answer? He was a bad guy. And we are watching and we're like, yeah.
Insane, because what? They told Rohan and Ahana have been in a relationship for 3 years.
It's
not like a 2-month summer thing or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was done better in, I don't know if you remember Gehraiya, which was, obviously,
I remember Gehraiya, we spoke about it.
It started off as a regular movie about relationships and people, then obviously it kind of jumped the shark. But in that movie also, the relationship Deepika Padukone's character has with her boyfriend, it's not like the guy is outright evil. He's just very self-centered and not giving her attention, and that pushes her to do certain things in her life, right? And I was anticipating something similar with this movie also, but because this is obviously less mature, right?
Hmm.
So it feels the need to kind of portray that quote unquote bad evil villain character as a
Non one's like two-timer, like this is what he does all the time and he feels no guilt about it.
just two-dimensional kind of evil guy, right? Like there's no reason behind it.
Because like that's the only way to affiliate protect the sanctity of this trio's universe, right? Because otherwise, like you start making this movie more mature, and you need to start having a mature conversation about what Neil did.
Which the movie is
and
not,
it's not ready for them. Movies like ready to wrap up and move on.
Sometimes literally. But isme, so I mean, all this aside, it also like I also kind of thought about how, unlike a lot of stuff that we watch, and in fact most of the stuff that we watch, this movie looks like a real movie, right? And that goes a long way in just building goodwill. Like I'm willing to
That was the reason I was like, actually, like the movie is like so real in that sense. Made in Heaven is completely fake, which is like funny because I think the director is the crucial part here. He cares about like making the world look real. Like the first sort of like moments of Imad and him swiping on Tinder, everything feels like tactile, feels like the actual app him being used, right? Like he that part he really cares about. Like he wants to show our online spaces how they work, and they're very particular about ensuring that those look as real as possible.
And very basic things that we kind of have lost sight of, especially post-pandemic, like where, for instance, are you going to set a certain scene where two people are talking, right? It could either be in a closed room or it could be on the streets. And this movie chooses to kind of play around with that on location, on the ground. And that immediately kind of transports you to a different world, even though that world is real and recognizable and you probably walk those streets yourself, right? But because so few movies are even willing to do that much, like that much hard work, ki hame jana padega, set up things. Why move outside the studio type thing? When you could...
they won't even show you a window because they're like, if we show a window, they have to show something outside, which means you have to either fake it or we have to like find a location. Like, so this is like, no, don't show window, just shoot against a wall.
So, for these simple reasons that this movie is willing to be a real movie for a change, I'm willing to kind of engage with you and kind of dance with you and play with you for longer than I would any other nonsense. And I don't know if the movie repays my good faith entirely.
Yeah, that's the like I struggled with it. I was like, I could never get myself to a point where I'm like, just dismiss the movie and move on. I'm like, okay, it feels like the heart is in a good place. Like it's trying to be something, and it's also like giving us, as you said 2 minutes before, a movie that we don't normally get because Bollywood is so obsessed with catering to the masses. So that way I'm appreciating this. I'm because it's one thing to see an American film about like Gen Z or millennials and their world. Like we get to see enough of them. But to see the same thing with people like who look like you, like that's still like, if you don't know it matters and it feels different until you see it. And that's what I was getting for the longest time. And with like just like, everything, the small thing, right? Like that we're told things sometimes without even being told things, right? Like, like I think one of the things, the way we learn that honest cheating is that they just show us like 2 timestamps on Instagram, that 24 week release, like tiny things like that, showing like 1 tick on like WhatsApp, and it's like she like getting paranoid of like, oh, he's probably blocked me. Like there's things just by being in this space, right? Of how you lived this online space. So those kind of touches really like sort of enliven the movie and make it feel, as you said, like it feels like could be happening in on.
But yeah, I don't know.
But then it's like it stops short of like actually serving each of its characters well enough.
I mean,
sadly.
Like I said, it's just where they needed to kind of understand that the movie is not about social media. The movie is about these 3 people, and it keeps making the mistake of just whenever given the choice, it's like, oh yeah, obviously we need to make like a point about social media now, which is like just a stupid.
Yeah, like the only character who's spared really from that is like Imad, right? Like his thing is either stand up or like
correct
Tinder dates. It's like he's not really pushed into it for me. But like, yeah, they didn't need to like pair Neil with an influencer. Like he could just have an offline life, and maybe like only Ahana could be that person, right? Who's suffering through this thing. Like you don't have to push all of them in a way towards this. Like it's almost like they've found this thing that like, oh, we need to have a movie about the digital age, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
They've gone through that angle rather than like, oh, we need to make a movie about 3 friends who just living
who just happen to be living today, and Obviously, they're using their phones or whatever. That's because...
Yeah, because that's how our lives are. Half our lives, sometimes more than half our lives, are online, and the rest of them are offline. Like, and it's just like other scenes that really hot. I started laughing, and it was not really a funny scene, but like at one point, the three of them are sitting in the same room, and they're all on the devices. Like Neil has headphones on, he's watching on his tablet. Anna was on the phone, and the dude Imad is swiping on Tinder. Like no one's talking to each other, literally in the same room, and no one cares. And it's like, yeah, this is so real. This happens all the time.
Which the movie would have got its point across if we had just one of those scenes, of those shots, and we would have understood everything we need to understand about these three people and where they come from, and that would have been enough. But then, unfortunately, the actors are also good. They can. There's a lot of really weird lines in this movie, which they kind of...
Yeah. If you see this movie, like, oh, Ananya Panday can probably act. So like, she's not been given good enough writing until now.
No, they're writing the choda because she's being made to play like small town B tier girls where she cannot do that.
Yeah.
Why? It's just miscasting. It's not her fault. She shouldn't be up for those roles in the first place.
Yeah, give her that. She's built for this role. Like that scene with like Lala where she hands her the present and she has to like fake. I was like, this is probably, in a way, it was like almost like a meta level commentary as well there. And I loved it for that. I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. I don't know if Ananya Panday realizes like the meta commentary happening there when it's good.
No, but you're right. That scene, even I noticed she was very funny in that scene. That scene felt weird, but it felt like she saved that scene, yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure about the movie. It's fine, I guess.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think, like, I'm not sure it could have been through, because in a way, I feel like maybe the strongest parts have coming from Zoya Akhtar Bakati, but I feel like they are also the ones holding back this movie sometimes.
Possible. What do you think log kya kahenge? Because again, we have no idea right now, right?
Yeah, because clearly we have no pulse on what the audience feels about anything.
I don't know. इसमें तो तुम nepotism ही नहीं कर रहे, because for one Ananya Panday there are two outsiders in the cast.
So at least we don't have disingenuous arguments, so that's good. But as a movie itself, I feel like there'll be a certain section, like especially within like people who've always been online, like it's like Gen Z is a long thing, right? It's like 97 to like 2010. That's like long. Like someone born between 97 and 2000 they had a very different life between someone born between say 2005 to 2010. So I feel like that latter crowd is gonna connect in some ways a lot more stronger, because they are actually going through this crisis right now, right? Like they were born and like maybe they were online before they even wanted to be online.
See, the Gen Z kids will relate more to just how they address certain issues in their lives, and the older ones, like for say like the millennials, will relate more to the issues themselves without focusing on how they're addressed. Just the fact that these people are kind of unmoored in their existence is one thing. But obviously, like I can speak for myself. I will not jump onto the internet to kind of find solutions to problems that all three of these characters are going through. But someone born, in the late 90s or early 2000s might.
Yeah, I mean, even though like
for that,
I wasn't born in the era like of the online, always online, but like I've lived through to some of these moments that these characters had, right? Like there is, like nobody really puts like that much stock into like the online validation, but like there are points you found us yourself in that space where you're like, wait, I thought this would actually get more likes and this didn't get enough likes, and you, for a moment, you feel low and you realize that you're like, what stupid thing am I doing? Why am I caring about this? But you had those moments you're just like, oh, I thought this would actually matter more. So I think those kind of moments when they show, especially like, like I think girls like what, like I'm sure like seeing still high school or middle school, but really relate to like those kind of moments where like I'm sure like people have dressed up to like not go anywhere and then just like taken everything off and been like, yep, that's it, I just put it up. Actually, when Imad walks in once, like one day when she's literally come back from her job and she's like, what, you're posting bikini photos? You just came back from your job, right?
I mean, it's a much better version of whatever nonsense, that Babel Khan thing that we watched some weeks ago. We in fact watched two nonsense Babel Khan things, but I'm talking about the Friday Night Plan one.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. No, that one wouldn't make any sense. There was no social media in Bhopal.
But yeah, chalo.
Time to wrap it up?
Yep.
Okay. That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and that's The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review. Please in this episode because we care about validation as much as the honor. And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening.